Radiant Black, issue number 1 from Image Comics. So in the last issue, we had the Radiants, well, Marshall, Nathan, and Radiant Pink. And then also they got Radiant Red involved as well. They had them show up to fight this giant space robot, and they destroyed it. And now they have a stash in Marshall's garage, and they're trying to discuss what they're going to do with this thing. Marshall wants to like fly it towards NASA and have them deal with it. Nathan's like, nah, like maybe we shouldn't do that. This thing is very like highly technologically advanced. Maybe we shouldn't put it in the hands of the government, because what if anyone like gets their hands on it? Like not just the government, but like what if it ends up like on the black market or something? Like we got to figure out what this stuff is first before we deal with what we're gonna, who we're gonna give it to. And that's when the cops from the very first issue show up, and they are aware that Nathan and Marshall are the Radiants. The fact that they've kept it to themselves is interesting. Like, there's so much we can do with this. It feels kind of weird that you have these characters that you hardly ever utilize for 21 issues. We could have had like Nathan and Marshall maybe trying to rely on the cops for like information on stuff. Maybe we could have, I don't know, had them like deliver the money that Satomi stole without having to turn her in. Like, there's so much stuff you could have done with these cops, but instead they just kind of show up briefly. Marshall makes a pig joke, and they basically said, hey, there's these folks looking for you. And, I think there might be with the government. You might want to go, check that out. So Nathan, as the Radiant, shows up, and it's this guy who works for the post office. So yeah, he works at the post office. He basically explains that there's a lot of interagency politics. A lot of people are trying to figure out what jurisdiction like all this stuff falls under. Like, there's over 200 federal laws that the post office enforces. We work tirelessly to protect the mail and build detailed cases against anyone who misuses it. Basically, we can help you out. And he wants to get his hands on Shift. And so we see Marshall and Nathan, they're inside Marshall's garage, and they're discussing about if they should work with the post office or not. And while there, they start realizing that there's something up with their powers. Like, there's a knock on the garage door, and Marshall's like, hey, like, why don't you radiant up just in case? Because I don't know who this is. And Nathan is struggling to power up his radiant suit. And then it turns out to be Radiant Yellow, and he shows up, and he's like, yeah, you need to take the job with the post office. You need to go to this address at this time. This is where Shift will be. You need to take him down, and you need to hand him over to the post office guy. Like, this is very, very important. If you can't do this, or if you won't do this, then we can't avoid the giant war that is about to come. And so they're like, all right, I guess we got to work with this post office guy. So they're flying down there, and Marshall is the Radiant Black at this point, and he's using his powers to carry Nathan with him, when all of a sudden the powers dip out, and they both start falling to their deaths. Nathan starts freaking out. He's like, come on, damn it, work. And then all of a sudden he's able to radiate up, and he saves the two of them just in time. And they're just kind of wondering, okay, what the hell's going on? Why are our powers kind of on the fritz? Is it because we're bouncing our powers between the two of us, and it's not supposed to be like that? Like, one of us should be the Radiance? Like, what's going on here? But they eventually show up at this diner where Shift is there. Nathan goes in at first because he's like, all right, instead of fighting him, why don't we try to just talk to him first? So Nathan's in there, and he's trying to get Shift to stop. Basically, what Shift is doing is he is using all his knowledge of like the Radiance and the suits and stuff like that, and he's building weaponry that he's selling on the black market. So he's basically a weapons dealer. And his excuse is that I know that something big is coming down. I know like a giant alien invasion is going to like happen, and I don't trust you to protect the world. So instead, I'm going to try to power up humanity as much as I can. But then, of course, Nathan points out, nah, you're just doing this to make money. Like, you're giving a bunch of dangerous weapons to who knows who. It could be dangerous people that are going to use it against each other. You're not doing anything heroic. This eventually leads to a fight. Yeah, I'm going to kind of stop it here. I don't want to spoil everything. I will say it's interesting. I feel like Radiant Yellow is lying about something. I feel like, because at some point he mentions, it seems to be hinted at that Marshall should be dead, and that the fact that Marshall's still alive is throwing things off and could cause a war, or that Marshall's going to be behind it. So who knows if Radiant Yellow's like helping, but he's trying to help in a way that he's eventually going to try to get rid of Marshall. The post office dude, I don't know, that just seems kind of sketchy. And then Shift, I feel like the Massiverse is constantly trying to make Shift a thing, and it's just not working. I don't like him as a character. Maybe you have a different opinion, but I mean, we've seen Shift in Radiant Black, we've seen Shift in Radiant Red, we've seen Shift in Dead Lucky. Like, it seems like the Massiverse is constantly trying to make Shift a thing, and it's like, it's not a thing. It's just not working. I don't know. There could be something here with this character, but you haven't really gone about it in any interesting way. I guess you could have said something like, you could have gone with Shift is creating suits to give to people that he feels are more deserving than the Radiants. Like, because there's a conversation here where he says something like what, you and Marshall, like, you think you guys are worthy of the powers? What about Radiant Pink and all the time she just spends playing video games? What about Radiant Red, who's wasting her potential in prison when she could be out there fighting the good fight? I can't have the fate of the world rely on you. And then immediately switches to him selling weapons on the black market. And it's like, you could have done something different instead, where you could have had him go to people like the music teacher, for example, who was using the suits as a form of therapy. Like, people who like might be more deserving of it, people who will like take it seriously. And you could have had Shift's whole thing be that he doesn't trust the Radiants, that the Radiants haven't shown that they're worthy of the powers, that the ones that he's come across have just been goofing off or wasting their potential. They're not taking any of this serious. And he's aware that there's a giant alien threat coming, and he doesn't know when it's going to happen, but humanity needs all the help it can get. And here we have these superheroes that's supposed to protect the world, and instead they're goofing off, playing video games, rotting in prison, and trying to make it in Hollywood. And he's like, I can't rely on them. So instead, I'm going to use my knowledge of this technology, and I'm going to create these suits, and I'm going to give it to people who I think are more worthy than them. And they become the villains because they have to leech off, their powers. They have the power of their suits by leeching off of the Radiants, which harms them. So they're already at odds with the Radiants. Like, you could have done something real, like that. That would have been way more unique and more interesting. But instead, you introduce them as YouTubers who are using their who are using their powers to like rob banks, gain influence, make money. And now he's selling his ideas on the black market. So it's like, you had the potential for a very interesting character, and then you just kind of destroyed it. I don't know. Maybe you disagree. I think my idea would have been a lot more interesting, where you had this character who doesn't feel like he can rely on the Radiants because they haven't shown that they're trustworthy, to him at least. And so he's going to use his knowledge to try to build his own force that he can rely on to protect the world. That could have been something. And then you can just have this whole dynamic of different philosophies, But said, no, we didn't get that. We just get a classic cliche villain. But yeah, it's kind of similar to what I've been saying about the Rogue Sun, where it's like the Massiverse has so much potential, and then they just waste it. Like, there's so many interesting things you can do, and then you're just not seeing them to their full potential. Like, you have setups for what could be an interesting character or an interesting arc, and then you just kind of undercut it, and then you just kind of go the cliche route, or you just drop it all together. Like, you had the whole eternity thing, and then you had that for one issue, and then you just kind of dropped it, and we never mentioned that ever again. You had the robots telling Marshall that, hey, if you go into the eternity to save Nathan's life, you will most likely die. And he didn't. What's the repercussions of that? Why did they think he would die? Like, we never mentioned that again. You had the saber-wielding dude who you set up. I think even when he first came, like, it was basically told that he's not the only one out there that will be a huge threat to the Radiants. And yet he's the only one that's shown up until the giant space robot showed up, which took like 15 issues. Speaking of the saber-wielding dude, all of a sudden he's a good guy? No. You had him in the Eternity helping Marshall. Why is he doing that? Well, we never mentioned that. Why don't you mention it? Why aren't the Radiants asking him any questions? Like, if there are threats from space coming, and this guy was a former threat from space, maybe he would have more information. Maybe he could share, like, hey, this is the reason why I attacked you and stuff. I don't know. ask him. Like, he's just a character there that we could do something with, but you haven't done anything with in over 10 issues. So basically, over a year in our lifetime, uh, we had this character that you've done nothing with. You had a moment where you had Pink teleport Marshall into space, and they're like in the middle of this galactic fight, and then she teleports him back to Earth, and then that was just kind of there. Like, was that just a funny visual gag? Like, oh no, they're in a space war. Is that actually going to be a thing? How come Marshall isn't asking any questions about this? You would think, hey, maybe he would ask Radiant Yellow, or maybe he would ask the robots that are kind of giving the Radiants their powers. Like, hey, we saw this huge space galactic battle thing going on. Apparently, there's some huge war coming. Does it have anything to do with them? But yeah, it's like there's so many questions, and then I know what you're saying. Like, well, they're just planting the seeds, and eventually it's going to pay off. How long is it going to take before anything pays off? We are 21 issues in. We've gone 10 issues since Marshall went into eternity, and we've never addressed any of the fallout from that. We're like 15, 16 issues from after they fought the saber-wielding dude, and there's really no fallout from that. It seems like the author's kind of setting something up, and then after he sets them up and it's out there, he's like, never mind. I changed my mind. I don't want to do anything with that. And then he just moves on to the next thing. And then sometimes we circle back, but then we circle back for just a little bit, and then we just completely ignore it for like another, 10, 20 issues before we're going to come back to it. I don't know. I feel like the pacing, I've said this so many times, and I still stand by the pacing of this series is just absolutely terrible. I don't like the order of events, the way things went. I don't like the fact that it's not even like, oh, we're foreshadowing. It's like, no, you bring something up and then you completely forget about it altogether. Foreshadowing would be like you have something and then you kind of start bringing it up a little bit more and a little bit more. So basically you plant the seed and then you're watering that seed. And it's slowly growing, but it's not the main focus. It's just there. It's just a constant reminder. And then eventually it pays off. But we're not even doing that. It's just like, here's a seed. All right, let's ignore that. Let's go and do all these other things. Okay, hey, remember that seed? Well, here's a little bit of it. All right, we're going to just completely ignore that. Okay, let's go back to some more other things. I've already talked about, like, I didn't like the fact that we went from them getting their powers to them immediately fighting a a otherworldly threat and then going with street level criminals. Like, I would have done it the other way. I don't like the fact that we met all the Radiant characters in like issue 5, and then they all decide to dip out and go their own separate ways and not work together. I mean, sometimes one might pop up and help a little bit, and then they dip out again. And it's like, hey, wouldn't you want to like all stick together and try to discover what the hell is going on? Especially if you know there's going to be this huge, gigantic, like earth-destroying war that's going to happen that you're all trying to prevent. Why aren't you guys all trying to work together? Why is it just Radiant Black and Radiant Yellow who seem to be interested in this thing? What the hell is Radiant Pink doing? Why are you allowing Radiant Red to just stay in prison, not doing anything, when you can just have her come out and help her? I would think trying to fight off this trying to prevent this giant war that's going to destroy the Earth would be a lot more important than Satomi trying to redeem herself in prison. I don't know. It seems like the author has a lot of ideas and he's just throwing everything he can on the wall, and some things are sticking and then other things like they just stick for a little bit and then they fall off. So it's like, okay, it fell off, so we're going to ignore that and just move on to some more stuff. Let's throw some more stuff on the wall. I have no idea where this series is trying to go. It has so many setups that don't really pay off. The pacing and the order of events is just completely terrible. It should have, in my opinion, gone another way. We have characters that could be interesting, and then they just end up being cliche, which is exactly what happens in Rogue Sun. It's so much wasted potential. Like, there's so much here, so many like good ideas, and then they're just poorly executed. And I don't know if this is the writer or I don't know if this is the editor. I want to blame the editor, just because I don't know. I kind of think of it like the George Lucas circumstance, where you have a writer who is very great with creating things, but needs someone to just kind of funnel their ideas into one good streamlined story. Like George Lucas. George Lucas didn't have a lot of leeway when it came to the original Star Wars trilogy. He had a lot of people there helping him kind of streamline his ideas into a coherent script. And then we saw what happened when he had all those leashes taken off with the prequels. It just was terrible. I feel like maybe that's what Kyle Higgins is his problem is. Maybe he has a lot of great ideas, but he needs an editor to just keep jabbing at him and be like, no, get rid of this, do this instead. Okay, we like this, but we don't like the way that you're thinking of executing it. What if you do this instead? Because I mean, I've read his stuff from other publishers, and they're a lot better than the stuff here from Image, which leads me to believe that maybe it's the editor's fault. But I don't know. I don't want to like blame someone if I don't really know. All I'll say is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. Like I can see like a lot of good things. They're just poorly executed. It's just a lot of wasted potential. So yeah, it's just the Massiverse is just a huge mess. Radiant Black was the best one of the series. I would say right now is probably Inferno Girl Red, and that's just because Inferno Girl Red has only one issue, and it wasn't a terrible issue. It was actually a good issue. So that already immediately puts it at the top. But we'll see. We'll see if it gets any worse. I hope not. I mean, it's like I said, that series started off really good so far, so we'll see where that goes. But everything else, it's like, damn, man, I really want to enjoy the hell out of you. And there's so much there that I can enjoy, but you just waste so much potential. I don't know. It feels like we go issues with just nothing happening, and then something happens, and then nothing happens again. We bring things up only to ignore it or forget about it, and then we come back to them 15 issues later. We set up a character that's terrible at first, and then we throw in a little something that, oh, actually this could be a little bit interesting. Nah, never mind, forget about that. He's back to being cliche again. I'm just face palming, like, what are you doing? There's something here and you're just wasting it away. But there you go. There's Radiant Black issue number 21. I don't know. I'm starting to get just kind of tired of just seeing what could be something just not living up to what it could be. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later. So what'd you guys think of that video? I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe, hit that bell for a notification, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't enjoy the video, thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next video is more to your liking. Feel free to check out the playlist that you guys see, and I hope to see you guys next time. Later.